stuff very closely.
Well, there are a lot of different elements that come into play as the latest U.S. debt drama plays out. Ronald Reagan's former budget director has some solutions of his own to help get the U.S. back in the right fiscal track. David Stockman joins us now to talk about it. Good to see you, David. Well,
good afternoon.
We went through the debacle of this super committee. Frankly, I didn't have much hope in it from the start. Did you?
No, I said at the time it was kicking the can. They didn't face the issue.
You said that back in August, I remember you saying that.
I said that in August. I said it in October, and it's clear. We have a real crisis in this country because the gap has gotten so big that our political system isn't capable of addressing the magnitude of the problem, and so there's paralysis.
Should we go to a dictatorship? I mean, what are you suggesting?
I think the only way we're going to break this deadlock is if we have a massive bond crisis that finally scares the daylights out of the entire system, but especially Wall Street. We actually have seen this in Europe. Greece didn't face up to its problem until the bond market finally woke up. The same with Italy. Frankly, it's happening today with France. It's happening with Belgium. And we're in the same boat maybe a year later. We're going to face the music in December 2012. That's when all of these temporary fiscal measures expire. It's $7 trillion day of reckoning. All the tax cuts from the from the Bush era, expire. The $1.2 trillion sequester takes effect all on January 1. And so the Congress then is going to be between a huge rock and a hard place. On the one hand, if they let all this expire, which I think would be good from a fiscal point of view, it'll put the economy in the tank for years to come. On the other hand, if they extend everything again, kick the can as they did last year and they did this summer, the bond market will have a violent reaction, including the rating agencies.
But the ratings
so that's where the problem will come.
Well, the ratings agencies say, for example, Fitch said, we still deserve AAA rating. Number one, do you agree with that? And number two, even if they cut it like S&P did, the only thing that happened was that people rushed into the very instruments that were supposed to be worrisome, and that was U.S. Treasuries.
We don't deserve a AAA rating. We're done with AAA. Our fiscal situation is 100% debt and rising. Our decision-making process is paralyzed. We're going to be in a solvency crisis for the next 10 years. So from this point forward, all the ratings will go down and down and down as we stumble from one crisis to another. So those are the facts of life, and the blame I would put right on Bernanke's doorstep. Today, you can borrow money for 3 months, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years at 2 basis points, 10, 40, and 90. Now, when you tell the Congress that you can borrow up to 5 years at what is essentially zero interest cost, a rounding error in Washington way of looking at things, they're not going to bite the bullet. They're not going to fall on the sword.
There's a lot of blame to go around. You worked for a guy named Ronald Reagan, who used to make deals with the Democratic Congress all the time. He and Tip O'Neill, who was the head of Congress at the time, made deals on all kinds of things, taxes and budget deals. President Clinton, a Democrat, worked with a Republican Congress to make deals. Where was the president in working with the super committee? I mean, he was absent without leave.
I think he was absent, but so was the Republican leadership. We now have a 7 or 8% of GDP structural
deficit. But don't you need a leader to come in like a Ronald Reagan, like a Bill Clinton, to knock heads together and make a deal?
Yeah, I agree you need a leader, and I would blame the current occupant of the White House for being AWOL on the whole fiscal issue since he was sworn in. On the other hand, the Republicans are being absolutely obstinate on the tax thing, on the tax matter. Now, if you don't put everything on the table, defense, taxes, and Social Security and the entitlements, the system will grind away in this kind of farce that we've had, and nothing will be joined.
Right here yesterday, David Walker, the former U.S. comptroller, said the same thing. We need tax hikes on certain groups, but also we need the spending of things that people don't want to touch.
Right.
How do we get to the point where elected officials stop caring about getting reelected and do the right thing?
I think we get to that point after the election in 2012, when the lame duck Congress faces down this massive day of reckoning, where if they don't act, taxes are going to go up dramatically. If they extend all the tax cuts there will be a massive conflagration in the bond market. Then they will have to face it down. Until then, I think it's all politics.
So from Election Day 2012 to Inauguration Day January 2013, within that small period, that's when something gets done.
Well, that happens to be the last days of the Mayan calendar, as we all know.
Oh, no! David Stockman, you're more mystical than I thought. Good to see you, man. Thank you very much for coming.
What's next, the Fibonacci treatment? Oh, my gosh. All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
They were
Wonderful
right.
to see you.